The Cincinnati Bengals suffered a crushing 28-3 defeat on Monday Night Football, and honestly, from the very first quarter, things never clicked. That opening drive gave fans some hope with a few strong runs, but after that, the offense collapsed, the defense had no answers, and penalties kept piling up to make matters even worse. Emotions boiled over on the sideline, too. Ja'Marr Chase was visibly frustrated with Zach Taylor, as the offense kept stalling. Nothing seemed to go right for Cincinnati all night long, and the performance left fans with more questions than answers. But before we dive into the latest news and break down what went wrong, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and hit the bell icon so you never miss Bengals updates. Let's move on to the new news. Now, the only real injury update coming out of this game involves wide receiver Charlie Jones. He left in the third quarter with a right ankle issue, was listed as questionable, and ultimately didn't return. Given how lopsided the score was by that point, it made sense to keep him sidelined. We'll keep an eye on official updates from the team over the next couple of days to see how serious the situation is. Let's talk about the biggest takeaway from this Monday Night Football disaster against the Broncos: penalties. The Bengals simply could not get out of their own way. 11 penalties for 65 yards doesn't just kill drives, it kills any chance of momentum. And it felt like every time Cincinnati managed to make a positive play, the flag came flying in to erase it. Think about this: by halftime, the Bengals had already been flagged 8 times. That tied a mark for the most penalties in the first half of a Bengals game in the last 15 years. 15 years. That's not just sloppy, that's undisciplined football. The most frustrating part? These weren't all tough calls by the refs. So many were pre-snap mistakes, lining up wrong, jumping early, things that fall squarely on preparation and focus. At one point, Jake Browning hit T. Higgins with a gorgeous deep ball down to the 20-yard line, a play that could have jump-started the offense. Instead, wiped out. Penalty. And that was the story of the entire night. When your own lack of discipline takes away every spark, it's not just a bad night, it's a reflection of coaching and accountability. And that's exactly where the questions start to build. Another glaring issue for Cincinnati is the run game, or really, the lack of one. Yes, Chase Brown had a few promising moments early. He finished with 10 carries for 40 yards, and on those first couple of drives it looked like the Bengals might finally have some rhythm on the ground. But once the scoreboard tilted heavily against them, the run game disappeared, forcing the offense into a predictable pass-heavy approach. The real question is this: where's the adjustment? Samaje Perine touched the ball just once all night for 4 yards. If the thumb issue isn't serious, there's no reason he shouldn't have been more involved. And even if he wasn't 100%, you can't keep rolling out the same exact look and expect different results. The offensive line deserves its share of blame, too. Holes closed quickly, and pressure forced the Bengals into abandoning balance altogether. You saw flashes when Jalen Rivers was rotated in, but flashes don't win games. At some point, this coaching staff has to decide: either give Perine and Brown a real chance to carry the load, or make a move for another back. Because right now, the Bengals' rushing attack is predictable, ineffective, and holding this entire offense back. Now, let's get back to more takeaways from this tough loss. One of the most frustrating things for Bengals fans has to be the lack of adjustments. When something clearly isn't working, whether it's penalties stacking up, the run game going nowhere, or miscommunication on the sidelines, you expect the coaching staff to make changes. But instead, it felt like Cincinnati just kept banging its head against the wall, running the same plays with the same results. That's the kind of stubbornness that turns a rough night into an outright embarrassment. Great teams find ways to adapt mid-game. Missed tackles, arm tackles, and jogs instead of pursuit turned routine plays into big gains for the Broncos. The lack of adjustments was glaring. With Trey Hendrickson neutralized and no other consistent source of pressure, Cincinnati never turned to blitzes or creative looks. The linebackers struggled badly in coverage, and without disruption up front, Denver dictated the pace from start to finish. What makes this even more troubling is that nothing seems to be changing week to week. If the defense can't find ways to disguise coverages or generate pressure beyond Hendrickson, it's hard to see how things improve. And that's less about individual effort and more about coaching and player evaluation. Right now, the Bengals' defense isn't just underperforming, it looks fundamentally broken. At some point, the conversation has to shift from just bad performances on Sundays to the bigger issue: talent evaluation. Zac Taylor and Duke Tobin are running out of excuses. Too many recent top 100 draft picks are either invisible, inconsistent, or simply not good enough to be difference makers. Look at the list: Jermaine Burton, another healthy scratch this week after showing up late to practice. McKinley Jackson, also inactive. Chris Jenkins Jr., up and down with no consistency. And Cam Taylor-Britt? He was burned all night against Denver. These aren't just one-off misses. They're part of a growing pattern of wasted opportunities. You can't build through the draft if the players you're selecting don't contribute. And when that happens year after year, the roster starts to look hollow. That falls squarely on Duke Tobin's front office. Then there's Zac Taylor. Without Joe Burrow on the field, his record speaks for itself. He hasn't shown he can scheme or win games without his star quarterback bailing the offense out. Truthfully, how many coaches in the NFL would win with Joe Burrow under center? Most of them. The difference is, they might not collapse without him. Right now, Cincinnati feels stuck. If the Bengals can't draft, can't adjust, and can't compete without Burrow, then maybe it's time to ask the hard question: is it time to move on from Zac Taylor and Duke Tobin? Takeaway number 5, Bengals fans deserve better. It's that simple. Year after year, the same story repeats itself. Ownership seems content with mediocrity, unwilling to make bold changes even when it's obvious the team is stuck. Remember the Marvin Lewis era? 6 playoff trips in 16 seasons, no wins, and yet he stayed forever. Now it feels like history is repeating under Zac Taylor and Duke Tobin. Yes, Joe Burrow changed everything when he arrived. But let's be honest, drafting Burrow and Jamar Chase wasn't some stroke of genius. Those were the easiest decisions a front office could make. Beyond that, the roster construction has been shaky, the depth is thin, and without Burrow on the field, this team looks lost. What makes it worse is that fans pour everything into this franchise: time, money, loyalty, only to watch sloppy football, wasted draft picks, and zero accountability. And while the record says 2-2, anyone watching knows it feels a lot worse. With the Lions and Packers coming up, the path ahead looks brutal. Even if Burrow returns late in December, will it matter? If the Bengals aren't in contention by then, you can't justify putting him back on the field. Which means, in all likelihood, another season is slipping away. Bengals fans deserve more than wasted opportunities and wait till next year excuses. They deserve a franchise that matches their passion with urgency. Right now, they're not getting it.